One.
Good morning and welcome to the NBA betting show. We have a pretty quick show today. Not too much going on. There's a couple potential things. We can do a lightning round, a recap from yesterday. With me, as always, is Matt Meisman. Mike Lockey is returning home and will be returning to the show, I think, in 2 days. Matt, let's jump straight into a quick recap of yesterday. What was relevant on its own and what was relevant for today?
So on its own, we had some news that happened pretty quickly after we got off the show, and it was kind of overwhelming to get everything at the same time. I am gonna just try to get yesterday's scores on the screen. Let me see. Um, okay, as long as the ESPN ads don't play, this will be good. There we
Oh,
go.
good. We're seeing the ESPN screen now.
Okay, so at 11:30 yesterday, we got Bam ruled out, and we got Zion and Herb Jones ruled out with Trey Murphy and Dyson Daniels downgraded all at the same time for New Orleans. So we got a huge amount of New Orleans news. And Zion was not on the injury report before that. He was supposed to play. So we didn't even talk about that game. Um, so with that one, it ended up just being a Pacers bet if you got it. And then there was really nothing else to do from there. We were showing a slight amount of value on New Orleans back the other way right at tip off because Larry Nance is actually pretty important with all those guys out, and he wound up
Mhm.
playing. So what I
Okay.
did was I bet a ton on Indiana, and then I hedged back some because we actually were showing slight plus EV. It was like 1.5 point gap, which is right on the borderline, but
Hmm.
worth mentioning, I think, because hedging makes sense when you've got either too much exposure on one thing or you have a plus EV bet in the other direction. Like in terms of bankroll management, we've talked about this a bunch. Um,
Hmm.
if you can get a plus EV bet at separate times on both sides of the same game, you don't need to have as much of an edge to do it. So, like if you've got a
Right.
two-unit bet on one side and now you can get a half unit on the other team after the line is shifted, like you're going with two directly negatively correlated bets. And in the long run, that's going to help you preserve bankroll. So I don't recommend doing this unless independently both bets are good. And we actually did have that. Um,
Gotcha. Yeah. With that much news, there could be a big shift.
yeah, and we actually
Okay.
had that in both games that I'm mentioning here. So I did that in Indiana. It was still a loss because I had way more on the Indiana side and New Orleans crushed them. Jose Alvarado is just too good. And then in the Minnesota game, I kind of laughed off the Kyle Anderson effect when you brought him up as a key piece. He was worth more than I had as the estimate, I guess, because of other parts of the Minnesota lineup that I didn't consider. We had him, he moved the projected line by 2 points. I thought it'd only be one.
Okay. Yeah. We had it at one,
Yeah.
but
Um,
so was it compounding effect with other guys out, or what
Maybe.
was it that drove the line that much? He
Yeah,
moved it that much.
I think it might be that they're playing Bryn Forbes more minutes and Austin Rivers more minutes, and those guys are really bad. And that is partly because Jordan McLaughlin is out, which I guess I
Yep.
wasn't really processing. These are pretty fringe depth players, but that's going to happen. That's why I call it an estimate for the projected spread impact. We don't know
Sure.
exactly until we see a team's starting lineup. Like we don't
Got it.
know, we didn't know who was going to start at center for the Heat last night. So Bam got ruled out. If you bet Minnesota right away, I think it made sense. And then when Butler got ruled out, I ended up adding, which probably was not the right move. So, and I realized that before tip off. So then I ended up rebetting Miami back the other way because it was the exact same thing as New Orleans.
Got it.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, Miami got up to plus 1.5. We projected the game right at Pick'em with everyone out. So, exact same thing, 1.5 point edge on the other side after having a 3 point edge on the original bet. My
Got
guess
it.
is most people didn't even get these, but there probably are some people who got like some Indiana, some Minnesota. The Minnesota bet's pushed. They lost by 3. That was the line we had talked about, so it kind of didn't matter. The Indiana line, I'm guessing I lost more than most people, but those news updates just kind of came out of nowhere. So again, it's just like a note to if you can be logged in for things. And a lot of this stuff is guys being sick. And
Hmm.
there are a lot of illnesses going around just in the world in general right now. So players are just
Great.
popping up on the injury report out of nowhere. We
Got
could
it.
get that today. Like we're going to segue to today's games.
Hmm.
We don't have a ton, but like anything could happen.
All right, so let's talk about one thing we did mention in the show yesterday was watching the Clippers game to see
Yep.
how that game was in terms of tightness and how many minutes Paul George was playing. In terms of our thoughts about whether he would play today, a lot of weirdness at the end of that game, where Clippers came back from what was it, down 14 with 3.5 minutes left.
Yeah, I'm just gonna mention so people know that I don't always win. Kawhi was ruled out for this game 2 days ago, like on Christmas. They just announced he'd be resting the front end of the back-to-back. So I had a Pistons +8 bet. When we came out on the show, it was already down to like 5.5. So we weren't talking about it. The Pistons were up by 14 with 3.5 minutes left. And not only that, the Clippers took out all of their starters. George wasn't in the game. I don't know exactly what point he checked back in. It might not have even been until overtime, but they overcame a 14-point deficit with a 16-2 run over the final 3.5 minutes to force overtime. And then the starters were in for overtime, so they were at least in for that. And then they won by 11. So Pistons +8, not so good.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about what that means for
what
today.
does it mean for today? Because, yeah, no one cares. So Paul George played 38 minutes and Ivica Zubac played 41 minutes.
Okay.
Those two guys, I think, are very much in question for today, just from the workload of the game.
Yep, let's look at can you pull the value tab for today up just so while you're talking about this game, we can see what it's looking at now?
Yeah, we don't have a bet unless George is out. So I was a bit wrong about this because I thought we were going to be projecting this game like 1.5 higher for Toronto than we are.
Yeah, I think we're looking at, you were thinking 7-ish when we were talking.
Yeah, and we're looking at 5.5.
Okay.
Yeah. The actual line, though, has dropped a bit, like since 20 minutes ago. FanDuel and DraftKings both have 4.5 right now. So that's a 1-point gap from what we're projecting. I think betting 4.5 now is the right move. Even if George plays and Zubac plays, -4.5 is still slightly off from the fair line. Like, that is a neutral EV bet. A 1-point gap is not a bet we would normally recommend, but as a worst case fallback option, I think it's fine.
And I just want to make sure
we're
recommending Toronto -4.5.
Yeah, Toronto -4.5, because even if everyone on the Clippers is playing, it's a neutral bet. Like, it's not a profitable bet, but it's okay. And that's your worst case scenario for what we have at tip-off. I mean, sure, could someone on the Raptors be sick today? But we don't have any indication of that. And there's enough chance George is out that I think there's enough upside to just do that now.
Okay.
So, yeah, the reason the Clippers are rating better than I realized is John Wall played last night. He was questionable, and I forgot that means he's out for the second leg of the back-to-back, and John Wall is by far the worst rotation player on the Clippers. Terrence Mann has gotten way less minutes this year for some reason, but he's much better, and he will play more with Wall out. Robert Covington may play a little bit more, especially if George is out too. Then Covington is going to play, no George and no Wall. Covington is more of a shot to get in the rotation, and he's a lot better than people realize. So he has a positive player rating. The Clippers rating is a little bit better than I thought it would be for today.
Got it. Okay.
But that still gives us a pretty big edge if Paul George is out. Like, we care a ton about him. So we're looking at a projected line of like 9 or 9.5 if George sits, and the current line is like 4.5.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing -5. The first place I checked, I'm just checking a couple of his spots.
The only 4.5s are at the two blue chip sports books, DraftKings and FanDuel.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything else is -5. So if you have those two, it'll be easy. If you don't, then I think I might wait on -5 for at least like 20 minutes and just see if it changes, because if DraftKings and FanDuel both have the same number, other books will probably
they'll follow along.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, okay. So I'm not saying wait till tip off because you only have -5. I'm just saying give it till
just wait till you find a 4.5 somewhere else.
Yeah, and if no 4.5s have popped up by I don't know, by the time we're done with this show, we'll come back to it, then I think then you can just take the 5.
Okay.
Because I do think the probability of George being out, which is probably what we do have to cover, I think it it's a decent amount above 50%.
Got it.
We don't
All
have
right,
any
so this
comments
becomes
from.
this becomes so solid. If you knew that for sure that Georgia is going to be out, how many units would you be betting on Toronto -4.5, or even Toronto -5?
I think it's like 2 units, maybe a bit higher, and then I may initially bet more because then I can hedge back the other way after it moves. Like when you know a line is going to move,
Uh-huh.
but forgetting that part of it, I think it's like a 2 unit bet. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. All right. So keep an eye on Clippers news for Paul George.
Mm-hmm.
If you can grab a 4.5 now, again, DraftKings and FanDuel, grab that Toronto -4.5. If you don't have access to those books, wait 30-ish minutes or so. Hopefully, one of your available books will come in at -4.5.
And then
Let's move
for the people who don't have all day to wait, like the people who are really really busy, like we're gonna give. That's most people, I think. So we're just gonna give a call out to them periodically. I think it's totally fine to bet 1 or 2 units on the Raptors and then hedge at tip off if George plays or cash
Got it.
out because
Okay.
you'll be losing a little bit of vig or you'll be losing the juice or whatever. But if George is out, then you just leave your bets alone. And
Right.
yeah, like I wouldn't even say to cash out the whole thing. You make like 2 separate bets and then you can cash out one of them or something like that. Like
Got
because
it.
the
Yeah,
one bet by
this is
itself
one of-
is still fine even if he plays.
Yeah, yeah, we're trying. We've talked about this over the last couple of weeks. We're trying to make sure that we're not just making recommendations that require you to be sitting watching Twitter with some obscure reporter's name that you're getting push notifications for the day. So this one, what we're saying is there's such a big potential upside if George sits that you can make that bet now. And then if does turn out that he's in, then hedge back. But you can do that right before tip off if need be, or right when you get the news that he's confirmed in.
Right.
All right, let's move to the next game. Memphis, I think, is the next one we want to talk about. Looks like there might be some value available now, but maybe that line's just a bet MGM. But what are we looking at for the Grizzlies game?
Yeah, that's why I'm checking here just to see what the current lines are. This line was 7 last night. Now it's 8. Like, it's drying up a little bit. Let me go back to. Yeah, here we go. We have Memphis projected -10, and the line's like 8 everywhere. I mean, this is a quiet day for now. So the fact that we're even mentioning this one kind of shows that it's a bit slow today. But Devin Booker is out again. Cameron Payne's out again. Cameron Johnson and Jay Crowder have been out for a while. I don't know if any of them's playing anytime soon. So this Phoenix team is just not that good. And Memphis got Desmond Bane back and had a bad game on Christmas. So it makes sense they'd be a little bit undervalued. Phoenix is coming off this overtime game in Denver. I will say, like, for future betting purposes, the fact that Memphis is favored by this much is a really good indication of how good they are. But we do potentially have like a half unit bet on them tonight. So I'm personally going to wait and see if we can grab a 7.5, see if it falls half a point. I think taking -8 for a small bet is fine, though.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's really it for this one. We don't have a ton else. Like, as I said, news can just happen. And there are a couple players we are waiting on. There's 3 names on here that are all pretty impactful, but the lines appear to be set at a midpoint for all of them. So like with Sabonis, for instance, we have the projected line Denver -1.5 or 1.8. We would have it at 5.5 if he were out, and the line is currently 3.5. So
yeah, that's interesting. So they announced that he's got a fractured thumb.
Yeah,
but he might play.
Yeah, I think he probably won't play. That seems. But I'm really like my level of confidence is pretty low on this. Like that is a weird situation.
Yeah, I was just surprised that when I got the fractured thumb news, I thought, "Oh, okay, I love that."
Right.
No playoff bet that we.
Yeah, we're gonna add more to it. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Right. But then they said he might play through it without surgery. So anyway, so this is one. If Sabonis is out and you can get Denver -3, so that's Denver -3. So
some sites are up to 3.5, but there's 3 most places. Yeah.
Okay. So the value right now is showing for Sacramento with Sabonis in, but if Sabonis is out, then the value shifts to Denver, right?
Yeah, but it's not going to be a huge edge. So for that reason, I'm not going to bet it until we have him confirmed out because he may play and then we don't want it.
Okay.
So like
All
for
right.
the busy person, this may be a game you just stay away from. But if you can get Denver -3 when Sabonis is ruled out, if that happens, then it's
Got it.
probably nearly a 1 unit bet. Yeah, maybe a bit
Okay.
smaller. Because
All
we'd have the
right. And
projected line like
then,
5.5 if that happens.
all right. So anything else of that we think has value, or is this just we skip straight to let's tell people to check your Twitter account for updates through the day?
Well, Jalen Brunson is questionable in Dallas for his return to Dallas. And
Oh, do we get it? Do we get a Jalen Brunson video tribute tonight?
I have to imagine, right? He's never played for any other team. I think that's one. Unless
Right.
I'm remembering that wrong. He's spent his entire career there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he actually got hurt towards the end of the Christmas game. I think it's an oblique injury, and he's actually questionable for what might be the most important game of the season for him, like psychologically. So I do feel confident he's more likely to play because of that. But if he's actually hurt, they're not going to play him.
Right.
So,
All right. So this is if he's out, this is just a no bet.
right.
Right.
But we may have
Right.
Nick's edge if he plays.
If
But
he does. Okay.
yeah, I don't see much 5.5 anyway. Like, this is pretty narrow regardless. And Brunson is worth less than most people would think because Quickly is that good.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's just not a big deal if he's out.
Got it. All right. So as Matt mentioned earlier, with the flu bug and other stuff going around, you never know what might happen. We had some surprise news right after we closed up the show yesterday. So anything else you want to point out, or
One more thing specific to
Yes.
today, Jakob Pertl. They're playing the Thunder, but I am holding off here because, like, part of me just thinks both teams are going to rest players.
Uh-huh.
Right, like, this is not. Why would they want to win here?
I understand. They beat the Spurs last. Or I'm sorry, they beat the Jazz.
The
last
Spurs
night.
beat the Jazz. Probably gives them even more reason to be like, we can't win again.
Right. No, I'm with you. You're right. This one has a lot of question marks.
Yeah.
This could be one of those surprise SGA heel injury rest games.
Yeah.
So
what I
keep
will
an eye on that.
Yeah, what I'll say here is you just don't do anything, and then if you can react to news, then react to it. So if
Got it.
Pirtle and others were to get downgraded, like, we're showing the current line is fair with everybody playing.
Mhm.
So if we were to get Spurs guys downgraded, bet the Thunder. If we get Thunder guys downgraded, get the Spurs. Like, it could go either way. I do
Right.
think because the Spurs are on a back-to-back, though, they're the team that's much more likely to rest.
Got it.
So
Okay.
Pirtle's worth like 2.5 points, and then if, let's call it, Keldon Johnson or Devin Vassell were to get ruled out, that's like another point for each guy, maybe 1.5 for each guy. Trey Jones is
Mhm.
worth like 4 points, but I don't know if we're ever getting a Trey Jones rest game. But if he were to show up on the injury report, just to give the hypothetical, those 4 players combined, if like they all were out, is almost, that's like a Doncic level impact. They're
Got it.
like collectively 8 points or something. Because
All right.
we can run through the Spurs rotation, what it looks like if those 4 players all don't play. It's really, like, they're not the Spurs if they didn't have those 4 guys, Pirtle, Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Trey Jones. If they played a whole season without any of them, they'd win like 8 games this year.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. So, as always, guys, keep an eye on the Preaching Sense Twitter account. Matt will try to keep us updated as news breaks. So, not a whole lot actionable unless we get some of this news breaking. So, keep an eye out. And we will be back tomorrow, 10:15, hopefully with a more actionable day.
Yeah, short
See you
one
guys.
today, but we're going to have some back-to-backs going into tomorrow. So stay tuned for I'll post them on Twitter. We're doing a short one right now, but updates will be there, and then we'll be back tomorrow.